Have you ever stopped to ask how Cain, one of the very first sons of Adam and Eve, could have possibly found a wife and fathered a child if Adam and Eve were supposedly the only human beings on earth? It's a mystery that leaves many scratching their heads. But when we dig into the details of Scripture, some surprising truths begin to surface. In this video, we'll uncover the deeper biblical clues behind this ancient question, and the answer might truly astonish you. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and let's jump into this eye-opening journey together. The creation of Adam and Eve stands as one of the most defining moments in the Bible's grand narrative. According to Genesis, God formed Adam from the dust of the ground and gave him life by breathing into his nostrils. Then from Adam's own rib, God fashioned Eve, establishing not just the first couple, but the divine blueprint for human connection. This moment wasn't merely the beginning of life. It marked the launch of God's personal relationship with humankind and set the stage for the entire biblical story to come. After their creation and placement in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve began their family. Among their earliest children were two sons, Cain and Abel. Though they were born into a world fresh from God's hand, the seeds of human conflict were already stirring. Cain became a farmer, working the land, while Abel tended sheep as a shepherd. In time, both brought offerings to God. Cain offered produce from the soil, while Abel brought the finest portions from his flock. Abel's offering, given from a heart of true devotion, pleased the Lord. Cain's, on the other hand, was not accepted. The Bible doesn't spell out every detail, but many believe the difference came down to attitude and intention. Abel gave his very best in worship, while Cain's gift lacked the same sincerity and honor. The contrast stirred something dark inside Cain, an internal storm that would soon break loose. Cain's heart filled with frustration and envy, but instead of humbling himself, he let bitterness take over. Seeing Cain struggle, God issued a clear warning. Sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. It was a chance for redemption, a divine lifeline. But Cain ignored it. He let his anger speak louder than God's voice. In a moment of pretense, Cain invited Abel into the field. There, in isolation, his envy erupted into violence. Consumed by rage, Cain murdered his own brother, the first recorded killing in human history. The shock waves of that moment would echo through generations. And when God confronted him, Cain coldly replied, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" That chilling response exposed not only Cain's guilt, but also his complete lack of remorse. God, knowing the truth, delivered judgment. Cain was cursed, not just to wander the earth, but to lose the very ground he once cultivated. The soil would no longer yield for him. His identity as a farmer was shattered. From that moment forward, Cain became a restless soul, marked by sin, haunted by consequence, and driven from the life he once knew. Cain's reaction to God's judgment revealed a soul in turmoil, plagued by fear and uncertainty about what lay ahead. He expressed deep concern that, as a restless wanderer, he would be vulnerable to anyone seeking vengeance for Abel's death. In a surprising act of mercy, God responded by placing a protective mark on Cain. Though the exact nature of the mark of Cain remains a mystery, its purpose was clear. It served as a divine shield, ensuring no one would dare to kill him, even though he bore a curse. After this profound exchange, Cain departed from the presence of the Lord and went east, settling in the land of Nod. There, we're told, Cain knew his wife, and together they had a son named Enoch. Remarkably, Cain went on to build a city, naming it after his son, a symbolic step in humanity's transition from nomadic life to organized communities. Yet this very moment in Scripture raises one of its most puzzling questions. Where did Cain's wife come from? The Bible doesn't explain who she was or how he met her. The idea that Cain found a wife implies there were other people around, people not named in the early Genesis story. Genesis 4:17 simply states that Cain had a wife, leaving a gap in the narrative that many scholars have tried to bridge. Some interpret this as evidence of a larger, unnamed population beyond Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel. Even Cain's own fear that someone would kill him suggests the existence of other humans. In Genesis 4:14, Cain says, "Whoever finds me will kill me," which implies a society beyond just his immediate family. In response to this fear, God declared that vengeance would be taken sevenfold on anyone who harmed Cain, and then placed a mark on him to ensure his safety. This suggests that the world may have already been populated with enough people for such a threat to be credible. These verses open up a fascinating line of thought. Was there a broader human presence on earth that the Bible only hints at? Cain's concern and God's protective act seem to imply just that. Some lesser-known interpretations suggest that, aside from Adam and Eve, God may have created other human beings independently. Advocates of this theory argue that such a possibility would better explain how the population grew so rapidly. This view attempts to bridge the biblical narrative with anthropological and archaeological evidence, which points to the early existence of complex communities and human settlements far beyond what a single family could produce alone. According to this interpretation, the rapid emergence of structured societies and the archaeological record of widespread early human habitation suggest a larger starting population. However, it's important to remember that this idea, while intriguing, is speculative. It's not explicitly stated in the Bible. The Genesis account remains tightly focused on the lineage of Adam and Eve, offering no direct mention of other contemporaneous human groups created by God. While this broader theory may help reconcile faith and science, it remains debated among scholars and theologians. It cannot be confirmed from the sacred text itself. Genesis presents a selective story centered on a specific family line without revealing the full scope of humanity's beginnings. So any theory involving additional human creation falls into the realm of theological speculation rather than biblical certainty. The more widely accepted explanation is that Cain married a sister or a close relative, possibly a niece. In the cultural and historical context of the time, such unions were not considered taboo as they are today. Genesis never claims that Adam and Eve had only Cain and Abel. In fact, Genesis 5:4 tells us Adam had other sons and daughters. Some theologians even suggest that Eve may have given birth to many children, and the narrative simply focused on those most relevant to the biblical storyline. When Eve says, "I have gotten a man from the Lord," after Cain's birth, but no similar statement follows Abel's birth, it opens the door to the idea that there could have been more children in between. This gap in the text has led many to conclude that Adam and Eve's family was much larger than the few names were given. And without any clear biblical restriction, the notion that Cain married one of his sisters fits the time period, the population needs, and the narrative flow, providing a simple yet widely embraced answer to an ancient question. The idea that Cain married a sister or close relative is reinforced by Genesis 5:4, which states that Adam had sons and daughters after the birth of Seth. This indicates that the family of Adam and Eve extended far beyond the three sons commonly mentioned: Cain, Abel, and Seth. The Bible doesn't limit their offspring to these few names, leaving room for a broader interpretation of the early human family tree. Without a larger population outside Adam and Eve's descendants, the possibility that Cain married a sister becomes the most plausible explanation for humanity's continuation. In the early context of human history, such unions were culturally accepted and likely necessary for the survival and propagation of mankind. The Bible, in fact, does not prohibit sibling marriage during this period. That restriction came much later. Several biblical examples affirm this pattern. After the flood, Noah and his wife, along with their three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, were the only humans left. To repopulate the earth, They would have had to marry either their sisters or close relatives. Abraham also married Sarah, his half-sister, as confirmed in Genesis 20:12. These unions may seem shocking by today's standards, but they were customary and even essential in ancient times. Abraham's son Isaac married Rebekah, his cousin, and Jacob, Abraham's grandson, married Leah and Rachel, also cousins. These marriages reflect the social norms of early biblical society, where family lineages were preserved through close kin unions. It wasn't until the time of Moses, around 2,500 years after Adam, that divine laws began to prohibit such relationships. The Mosaic laws given to Moses as part of the covenant introduced stricter social and ethical boundaries, including the prohibition of incestuous marriage. These laws evolved alongside human civilization, promoting genetic health and societal order. But in the early biblical narrative, marrying close relatives was simply how life continued. While Cain and Abel dominate the story, the rest of Adam and Eve's children are often overlooked. Jewish and Christian traditions tend to spotlight dramatic characters like Cain and Abel, while the rest of the family fades into the background. Yet Genesis 5:4 confirms that Adam and Eve had many other sons and daughters. The lack of names for their daughters has led to their marginalization in both religious texts and interpretations, leaving gaps in our understanding of early human history. Of course, no single book could realistically detail every life from the beginning of creation to the end of days. That's why secondary texts, like the Book of Jubilees, emerged. Though not part of the canonical Bible, the Book of Jubilees offers rich background details about lesser-known figures, including Adam and Eve's daughters. This gives us a broader lens through which to view the early generations of humanity. While considered apocryphal and not accepted by mainstream religious traditions due to questions about its authorship and doctrine, the Book of Jubilees holds historical value. Often called Little Genesis, it dives deeper into the Genesis narrative, expanding on the lives of Old Testament figures, including details about the daughters of Adam and Eve that are absent in the Bible. According to the Book of Jubilees, Cain's wife was named Awan, also known as An, identified as the first daughter of Adam and Eve. Though her name doesn't appear in Genesis, this apocryphal text gives her a central role in humanity's lineage. Some interpretations connect her name to meanings like vice or power, reflecting both the struggles and influence she may have carried as Cain's partner. As Cain's wife, Awan becomes a foundational link in the human family tree. After his exile, Cain meets her and fathers Enoch. The Bible tells us Cain built a city and named it after his son, a significant act of civilization. The Book of Jubilees echoes this, presenting the founding of Enoch's city as one of Cain's key achievements following his fall from grace. Though Genesis is silent on the identity of Cain's wife, tracing the narrative from creation to Cain's exile reveals a simple truth. The early earth was already home to more than just 5 people. By the time Cain met Awan, it's likely that Adam and Eve's offspring had already grown into a modest but expanding population, including other women whose stories are left untold. In this context, Awan is more than just a name from an apocryphal book. She represents a deeper, more human part of Cain's journey. Her presence in these alternate texts offers insight into the lives behind the Bible's main characters. Whether seen as myth, tradition, or historical memory, these stories help fill the narrative silences and offer a fuller picture of how humanity's first chapters may have unfolded. So while the Bible itself keeps Cain's wife unnamed, supplemental traditions point to Awan as a key figure in the continuing human story. Whether literal or symbolic, her inclusion reflects the broader truth. The human family was growing, scattered across the earth, forming communities and shaping the earliest patterns of civilization. Beyond Eve, some traditions suggest that Cain's wife may have been his niece, a daughter of Seth. This theory arises from the considerable time gap between Cain's exile to the land of Nod and his eventual union with Awan. Many theologians estimate that this period could have spanned around 300 years. During that interval, Adam's children could have numbered over 50, with Seth's offspring exceeding 20, forming a small but growing human population. One of the most captivating aspects of these early generations is their extraordinary longevity. The pre-flood patriarchs lived lives that defy our modern understanding of human aging. According to Genesis, Adam lived 930 years. His son Seth reached 912, and his grandson Enosh lived to 905. These long lifespans were not rare exceptions. They were the norm. The most legendary of them all, Methuselah, lived 969 years, the longest of any biblical figure. Several theories attempt to explain this phenomenal longevity. One proposes that early Earth offered a more perfect, protective environment, free from the harmful radiation and pollutants that accelerate aging today. Others suggest that the genetic makeup of early humans was purer and more resilient. Still, some interpretations point to divine intention, arguing that God allowed these extended lives to help populate and stabilize the world in its formative stages. However, a significant shift appears after the flood. In Genesis 6:3, God declares, "My spirit shall not strive with man forever, yet his days shall be 120 years." This is often seen as a divine decision to limit human lifespan. Post-flood, the ages of biblical figures drop sharply. Abraham lived 175 years, and Moses died at 120. These changes may reflect a combination of divine intervention, environmental transformation, and diminishing genetic vitality due to repeated close-kin marriages. The post-flood world was dramatically different, less hospitable, more fragile, and requiring new social norms. With a growing population, marrying close relatives became both less necessary and more hazardous. This shift eventually led to the Mosaic laws, which prohibited incest to protect community health and uphold ethical boundaries. But during Cain's time, finding a wife from among sisters or nieces was not only acceptable, it was inevitable. Cain likely married one of his many close relatives, as that was the only viable path for humanity's expansion. This practice continued for generations until the population grew large enough to support broader, safer social structures. It's important to recognize that the Bible is clear on humanity's shared origin. Acts 17:26 states, "From one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth." Every theory must trace back to that original couple, Adam and Eve. Within this context, the Book of Jubilees introduces another significant figure, Ahura, the wife of Seth. As Adam and Eve's daughter, she represents the continuation of the family line through a righteous path. Her name, often associated with the color of the sky or lapis lazuli, symbolizes heavenly purity. She is more than just a companion to Seth. She is a symbol of divine appointment and moral continuity in the biblical lineage. According to tradition, Ahura was first betrothed to Abel before his tragic death at the hands of Cain. After Abel's murder, she became Seth's wife. This union wasn't just practical, it was symbolic. Seth was seen as the child appointed by God to carry on a sacred line in Abel's place. From their marriage came a generation that would shape spiritual history. Among Seth's children, Enosh stands out. His name, meaning frail man, reflects the growing awareness of human vulnerability. Yet it was Enosh who began the practice of calling on the name of the Lord, a spiritual milestone in the biblical narrative. This act of worship marked the birth of a deeper, more personal relationship with the divine, laying the foundation for future traditions of prayer and faith. Through Enosh and others like Enoch, the line of Seth continued to influence the unfolding story of humanity. These figures not only carried the genetic legacy of Adam and Eve, they also preserved the spiritual values that would define future generations. Ahura's role, often overlooked, reminds us that behind every biblical patriarch is a lineage shaped by faith, resilience, and divine purpose. Seth's son, Enoch, stands out as one of the most extraordinary figures in the entire biblical narrative. He is known not just for his righteousness, but for his unique intimacy with God. The Bible says that Enoch walked with God, a rare expression denoting a life of deep spiritual connection and unwavering faith. His devotion was so profound that he never experienced death. Instead, Enoch was taken directly by God, a divine exception in human history and a powerful symbol of what it means to live a life aligned with heaven. But perhaps the most significant figure from Seth's lineage is Noah, the righteous man chosen to preserve life during humanity's darkest hour. A descendant of Enoch and the son of Lamech, Noah was handpicked by God to build the ark and safeguard creation from the global flood. His faith, obedience, and courage in the face of a coming judgment made him the pivotal figure through whom humanity would survive. Through Noah, the legacy of Seth continued to shape the story of redemption. When we examine the two distinct lineages, Cain and Awan versus Seth and Azura, we see a profound duality that reflects the tension within the human spirit. Cain's line symbolizes rebellion, violence, and self-exile. In contrast, Seth's line represents faith, restoration, and moral alignment with God's will. These two branches of humanity offer more than a genealogical record. They portray the spiritual choices that define the human journey. One path leads away from God, while the other moves closer to Him. It's worth noting that while the Book of Jubilees offers compelling details, such as the names of Adam and Eve's daughters, it is considered apocryphal. That means it is not part of the official canon accepted by most Jewish or Christian traditions. Interpretations may vary across denominations, and not all agree on the historical or theological authority of such texts. Still, they provide context and perspective that enrich our understanding of early humanity. The Bible itself does not attempt to document every life or every event. Instead, it focuses on what truly matters: God's love, His justice, and how we should live in relationship with Him. It's a divine guidebook, not an exhaustive historical encyclopedia. Its pages point us toward deeper truths about faith, redemption, and the purpose of our existence. What God chose to reveal is everything we need to know to walk with Him in trust and obedience. While we may long for more details, we must remember that God's wisdom far surpasses our own. As Isaiah 55:8-9 reminds us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways." We are invited not to understand everything, but to trust in God's perfect will, even when we see only part of the picture. The Bible is a divine gift, a light to guide us in a world full of questions. Through it, we come to know the character of God, His love for humanity, and the path He invites us to follow. Even when details are missing or mysteries remain, what matters most is our response: to seek Him, love Him, and walk in His ways. So now we turn to you. What are your thoughts on the Book of Jubilees? Do you think Cain's wife could have been a daughter or niece of Adam and Eve? Share your insights in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay curious, and may God bless you always.